Hello everyone and welcome back to our adventure in Egypt. And today we have one of the most amazing experiences of our lives as we get up at the crack of dawn to take a hot air balloon ride over the Valley of the Kings. It was a sight to see. After our balloon lands, we're going to actually drive over and go into the Valley of the Kings and delve into the depths of the tombs to see where the ancient pharaohs were buried, just like Indiana Jones. Then we head to the Valley of the Queens and the amazing Hatshepsut Temple, a temple dedicated to one of the few female pharaohs in Egypt. After that, we head back to our boat and we cruise the beautiful Nile.
Welcome to Living Phase 2.
Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Nancy, and we're empty nesters striving to live life to the fullest.
And right now we're living that full life touring beautiful Egypt. And in fact, we're touring the skies over Egypt in an amazing hot air balloon journey.
We sure are, friends. And honestly, today was probably one of our top 10 days of traveling. When you include our world cruise travel and all of this travel, this was in the top 10. We were up bright and early at 4 in the morning.
Dark 30.
It's a little chilly out. Remember here, friends, it's January when we're visiting Egypt. And so it's chilly out, but we are met by a balloon guide, not our regular tour guide at this point. So he meets us on our river cruise and takes us and 4 others, and we need to get to the west side of the Nile in order to get onto our balloon. And the easiest way for us to do that is to take a little ferry ride across rather than drive up and around and over, and it's much quicker to take the ferry. A little snack for us on board, and it was a lovely ride across. And once our ferry got to the other side, we were greeted by a lot of vans. I mean, there were about 60 vans because there's hundreds of people that are going up in these balloons. So we got into our van and we had to wait because all of these vans need to be filled with everyone who's going on the balloon ride because they create a convoy. And from there, we have a police escort that takes us about 20 minutes into the desert where all the balloons are laid out and kind of staged to go up. And so we get out of it, we're there, we get out of the vans and we're waiting. Now what we're waiting on is air traffic control to say, hey, the weather conditions are good, the wind is good, you can go ahead and fill the balloons up with air. And as we wait, they keep us occupied. They did a little dance and they showed us how to do the landing procedures.
Now that was important.
That was important because you want to land safely as the basket comes down. But we waited for quite a while. But once they gave us clearance, then all of the balloons began filling with air. And this is where it's really beautiful.
Well, as our balloon went up, you could see the beautiful sunrise and coming up over the Valley of the Nile. As we got further up, we headed over the Valley of the Kings. This was a little surprising to me, as I had in my mind you'd see these gorgeous, amazing temples and things, but really the Valley of the Kings being tombs, you just see almost a blank valley. Now later when we land, we're going to explore the Valley of the Kings, and you'll see this up close and personal as we go into these tombs.
Another thing we saw was the Temple of Hatshepsut.
The crops and agriculture and the fertility of the Nile are amazing, and you can see right at the edge where the fertility ends and the desert begins.
But really one of the most beautiful things was all of these balloons in the air all at once. Just the colors were stunning It was just a pretty, pretty sight.
As we went further, we saw some little boys with a donkey chasing our balloons so they could be there when we land to sell us some of their wares. And then we headed down to land.
We had a really good, smooth landing. The ground crew was there. They were able to grab the basket, stop us right away. The balloon slowly started to deflate, and we were able to hop out of the basket at that point.
Yeah, they had a little ladder. Now, if you do have some mobility issues, this is going to be a little difficult for you because you are crawling out of a basket up onto kind of a staircase on the other side. You know, it's not too difficult, but just be aware there is some crawling and stretching and bending that has to go on. One pro tip here. So for some reason they don't allow like a GoPro style camera, or especially I think on like a stick, something that would extend. Cell phones are okay. They let you take pictures on that. They did take pictures, and I think they charged us about $10 for the pictures or something total. So we got all those pictures as well. It was very reasonable, yes. But our guide actually he saw me with my GoPro going around and taking pictures of it. And he kind of goes, hide that, hide that, hide that. And so he didn't tell me not to take it. He said, just don't let them see you with it, because then they may not allow you on the balloon with it. So keep your GoPro in your pocket, especially if it's on an extended stick, until you get on the balloon. But
then when we were up, there were numerous people with GoPros.
Yeah, and then nobody seemed to care. And then at that point, it actually worked out pretty good with us and our cameras. Well, like you said, we had a good landing. We got out of the balloon. Didn't see anything we wanted to buy from the Donkey Boys.
No.
And our balloon guide and the same driver took us back to where we met our regular guide. Be aware, you are going to be expected to tip the driver and your balloon guide. And in fact, they had a common tip bucket for all the balloon pilots. Once you landed, they immediately set up a little tip bucket so that you can give them something as well.
And the ground crew.
And and the ground crew, they all divide that up. Well, we met our guide and we sat down now. Since we left at 4 in the morning, he actually brought us a packed lunch from our boat that they packed for us. And we went to a little cafe where we got some coffee. This seemed to be a very common thing. There were quite a few people that had went on the balloon adventure. They were sitting having coffee, and they obviously allowed that you brought your own food in. And we sat and talked to our guide about our day and what we're going to be doing. Well, after breakfast, the first thing, it was a very short ride over to see the 2 largest intact statues here in Egypt, and these are the Colossus of Memnon, and they're believed to be of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, and from about 1350 BC. They were quite spectacular, and there's an entire temple complex they're actually working to uncover, and this may be another large temple complex that someday you're going to get to tour, but right now you get to see the Colossus of Memnon, and that's going to be a standard stop on any Egyptian trip.
Now, much of what we're going to see today is what we saw from the air. So we had that aerial view, and now we're going to get to go down and explore it. And the next place we were taken to was the Valley of the Kings. The Valley of the Kings is back from the 16th century BC, and it was over 500 years. There were 63 pharaohs, and each pharaoh has a tomb. However, they've only discovered 62 tombs. There's one that's still missing.
Yeah, and they're still looking for it. Now, the latest, I'm sure you've heard of, is King Tutankhamun, or King Tut. They found that one basically fully intact, which was really quite spectacular. And here in the next few days, in an upcoming video, we actually do get to go see the artifacts of Tutankhamun in the Egyptian Museum, so don't miss that one. And how will they not miss when that video comes out?
You won't miss it because you will have subscribed to the channel.
That's right.
No, friends, we really appreciate you. We truly do. Thank you for liking and subscribing, because that tells YouTube to send these videos out, and that means the world to us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, as we said, we started exploring down, and it's quite a bit of a walk. So again, make sure that you know your mobility and what you can do. You may want to bring some hiking poles. You brought your hiking poles along, and that helped a lot, because especially as you start exploring these tombs, there's a lot of stairs, and they're really deep, and it's long, up to 100, 200 yards down to get into these tombs. Well, as you buy your ticket to go into the Valley of the Kings, they're going to have between 6 and 9 of the tombs open for exploration that you can go into. With your general ticket, you get into 3 of them with the ticket. Now there's another 3 that you can pay extra to get into, and we asked our guide about that and you know, which ones would we want to go into. He gave us some recommendations. Now one of them that is extra, and it's the most expensive one that you can go into, you can go into the tomb of Tutankhamun. And, you know, we asked our guide about that, and he goes, well, it's really not one of the better ones to see. He goes, you really go in to say, I've been in King Tut's tomb. It's really more of a bragging rights thing. It's a good tomb, don't get it wrong, but it is more expensive. He recommended we go into the tomb of Ramses the Fourth and Fifth. Now, this is a very unique tomb that 2 pharaohs were actually buried in the same tomb. And so this was later, when the kind of in the decline of Egypt, and you know, they didn't have as much money to build as many tombs, so they ended up putting two pharaohs into one tomb. And you know, so again, having a good guide, asking his recommendations, and trusting that he's going to give you good ones, he really led us to some really good tombs.
Well, the first tomb we went into was Ramses the Fourth, and we show our ticket to the guide. He's going to punch your ticket, so don't lose your ticket. You need to hold on to that. This one is very steep, but yet it's short. I was glad that I had my hiking poles here. It has lots of color on the inside, which you can see here. It's just beautiful. The hieroglyphics are one of the things that amazed me the most here.
So as we continued on, we saw the burial chamber and lots of stooping and bending as you get down.
Well, the next tomb that we went into was Ramses the First.
Now, this was a pretty deep tomb. You had to really crouch and walk and go downstairs and ramps. This one took a bit to get down.
Once again, there's some really good color here. Some beautiful art on the walls that you can see.
And has an amazing sarcophagus still within the tomb. I was really stunned at the vibrancy of the drawings, the art, and the hieroglyphics.
Oh, we said that over and over again, how amazed we were at that.
Well, we made our way back out of Ramses the First tomb, and we went to the tomb of Merenptah. Now this tomb has one of the best preserved sarcophagus, or sarcophagi, that there are.
It was really beautiful.
Well, as we finished up in the tomb of Merenptah, we climbed back out like a tomb explorer, and we headed on over to the tomb we paid extra for, the tomb of Ramses the Fifth and Sixth.
I think we said it wrong earlier, but it was
did.
Ramses the Fifth and the Sixth here. This is a beautiful tomb, and you can see them doing restoration work here. They're up on the scaffolding or up on ladders, and they're just dusting the hieroglyphics with a very, very soft brush. They spray it all down with water, and it's amazing how they're able to keep the color and the vibrancy of all these hieroglyphics. Now the sarcophagus that you see here has been restored. That's still cool to see.
And all the paintings on the ceilings, the walls, again, just an amazing tomb. This is one of the reasons this one is an extra charge. But also being an extra charge, we noted there's not near as many people here. It's a much quieter experience, and it's certainly worth the extra cost.
I agree.
Well, we made our way out of the tomb of Ramses the Fifth and Sixth and headed out of the Valley of the Kings.
So from here, we got back in the car and we headed to the Valley of the Queens, which is the Temple of Hatshepsut.
Yes, this is one of the most famous temples. You will see this in all the ads for Egypt. You'll see, everything that when they're describing, and this is one of those places it's a do not miss. Now let's tell you a little bit here about Pharaoh Hatshepsut. She was one of the only female pharaohs. There were a few, but she was one of the only ones. She actually kind of absconded with the pharaohship from her nephew. Her nephew was next in line to be pharaoh, but he was so young, she ended up taking his place and being pharaoh in his stead while he was growing up. Now, eventually, she, of course, died, and then he took over in her place. It's really interesting, though, when you look at all of the statues of Hatshepsut out in the front of the that are all restored, that you look in the front of her temple. So again, this is not a tomb, this is a temple. They all made her look male, and you can look at each of these different statues. They're all done a little bit differently. There's some that make her look the most male, with strong arms and a strong chin, even wearing the fake beard that pharaohs would wear. And there's some that look a little more feminine, but they did try to portray her as a man back in those times. Make sure you make it up all the stairs, look at all the different areas. It is incredible temple to see. The whole complex actually had been a temple for hundreds and hundreds of years, even thousands of years. In fact, one of the oldest temples, Hatshepsut had that destroyed. It was next to this temple, and then her temple put up in this place. But this is certainly, this temple of Hatshepsut in the Valley of the Queens is a do not miss.
Well, once we finished up at the Valley of the Queens here, our guide asked us would we like to go to an alabaster factory, because there's a lot of alabaster in this area.
It's incredibly famous in here, and you'll see lots of alabaster carvings.
Yes. Well, this is why it's nice. Our guide actually asked us, do we want to? And we said, this is really a shopping stop. And so we said no, that we would pass on it and just go back to the boat and have lunch.
Mm-hmm. So we got back to the boat. They had, again, a nice buffet for us. The food has been, I wouldn't call it great. I think the food on our world cruise, like on Royal Caribbean, was probably better. But for being a small boat, I thought they always did a really good job. Nice variety. They always changed the entrees. I thought it was good.
I really didn't have any complaints about it by any means. Was it spectacular? No, but it was good. Very good. Yeah,
it was really good.
It was above average.
Yes, we'll put it that way. Well, after lunch, we just kind of relaxed on the upper deck. We read a book. We just enjoyed kind of being there on the Nile. Actually, later in the afternoon, they had tea, which was nice. They set tea all up. We
put a bunch of pastries out for us.
Yeah, and they had tea where we could sit up on that top deck and have a little sip of tea and just enjoying the views on the Nile, because we did have a sail away, so we're actually sailing on the Nile while we're having tea. I really enjoyed that. We've had a lot of go in this trip with, Jordan and Sing and trying to squeeze in as much as we can. One nice thing about the Nile cruise, it slows you down a little bit.
I agree.
Because now we're going in between destinations and, just sitting and having tea and looking at the Nile and all the boats. And we felt like the boats were racing each other. One would pass another. Yeah, it was one thing that is a little bit, I guess, disappointing. There is a lot of pollution from these boats, so there's a lot of smoke, and especially as one boat passes another, kind of just be ready for that.
Well, one of the fun things that was happening while tea time and all of this was going on are these little boats, and I'm not quite sure how they do this, but they attach themselves to our boat. So a very small 2-person boat attaches itself to our boat via a rope and is now being just pulled along by our river cruise boat. And there's 2 fellas in the little boat below, and they're selling things, and they're yelling to us up there on the 5th deck, up on the sun deck, and they're showing us things. They're showing us dresses, or they're showing us scarves, and then they start throwing the dresses up to the fifth deck here, up onto the sun deck, and the people there, they're looking down and they're negotiating with those 2 people in the boat, and they're saying, I'll pay this for it, or he'll say, I want this, that's too much, I'll only pay you this. And so scarves and dresses were the things that they were selling, and then the things that they didn't want, that people didn't want to buy,
or they were even trying them on.
They were
trying to say, oh, this is too small. small? Do you have a bigger one or a smaller one?
Yes, and then they were throwing them back to the little tiny boat. It was funny because I thought if I were the one throwing it back to the boat, it would have ended up in the Nile.
Yeah. Well, they had kind of a net. They knew what they were doing.
They took a scarf.
Yeah.
They took one of their big scarves, and the two boat people were out holding the big scarf, so you dropped it down, and then they would move that scarf around to catch it, and I don't know. They had quite the system going on, and then when they felt like they had sold all they could, the people from our cruise ship released the rope, and they kind of went back to the boat behind.
Yeah, and went to the
river
next
cruise
boat
behind us, and somehow they attached to the river cruise behind us and started selling their wares again. That was fun to watch, all of that happen. We didn't buy anything, but that was fun to watch.
Yeah, if you're wanting a scarf or some Egyptian clothing, in fact, one night on the cruise, they had a night where you could dress up in Egyptian clothing. It was kind of encouraged. So you could buy some of this. They were selling anywhere from, say, $15 to $30 is what some of the clothing was going for. $5 or $10 for scarves, depending on what they are. So, but again, you negotiate, right? This isn't, they're going to tell you $50 or something, and you go back and forth. I think you have kind of all the power because you're up on the top, and you can just throw it back down and say, I don't want it, So yeah, it's a very typical thing to do on an Egyptian river cruise, is this bartering with the boats and the clothing.
Yeah.
So give it a try if you're looking to buy something here.
Well, we had a lovely evening just cruising along the Nile. They had a cocktail hour for us in the lounge where they were playing 90s music, but that was fun to go down there and have that. And then at 8 o'clock they had dinner, so they do eat maybe a little later than what we're typically used to. But then it was to bed because we've got another big day tomorrow.
Yes, that's right. We're going to see the best preserved temple in Egypt, the Edfu Temple. In fact, we take a horse and carriage ride to that. We get to go to the Kombo Temple. That one is really quite amazing. We see some of the very unique carvings. In fact, I even won $1 from our guide because he was betting I couldn't spot something that he was asking about. And we have another wonderful day on the Nile as we're cruising. So don't miss that video coming up tomorrow.
All right, friends, we'll see you very soon. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.